Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead. Hey,
Hey,
Ice.
WeedHead. Hey. On today's episode of She Blaze, tensions are still riding high with protesters in the streets. Cannabis dispensaries feel the civil unrest, and the DEA, as usual, plotting in the background.
Ooh, you know how I say, child. Woo,
Ooh,
it's
child, for
heavy.
real.
So
Mhm.
before we get into all of those topics, and they're going to merge together because we're just going to flow today, I definitely wanted to start with the high of the week. Of course, I always have to do a little note, but this is we don't get a chance to celebrate as much, and certainly in the last few days, it's just been crazy. But this high of the week is really about my own baby sis, our very own Ice Dawson, and our amazing listeners, our audience. It is about She Blaze podcast receiving the 2020 Communicator Award of Distinction. Yay!
Ooh,
I had like a applause
yay.
button. I'm like, dee, 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 dee,
We
dee,
need
dee.
that. Where's that on the map? Like,
Yay! Yes, we
thank
do
you,
need
thank
that.
you.
But the exciting part, the 26th annual Communicator Award, so it's been multiple decades. It is actually judged and selected by the Academy of Interactive and Visual Arts, so AVA, and we won for online video for podcasts, and that is just an amazing thing because ICE has the vision to create She Blaze, and we are the first cannabis media platform to win this award or win this type of award. So I'm excited. I'm excited because let me be real, coming target to THC to win a mainstream communications professional award and be in the same realm with folks like Macy's and Pepsi and Amazon in terms of marketing and communications out the gate. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of you. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew. We're going to post about it, of course, and let you know. But yeah, you might see our little ribbon, our little medal of honor. Congratulations, Ice.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you for empowering me to actually do the vision because everybody has a bunch of ideas, but the queen of execution was like, you got to execute it. And so I definitely thank you for this opportunity and really putting the battery in my back. I mean, this is how cannabis goes mainstream, and this also might be how you're going to see your girl on TV. Hello. So
Okay.
you never, you,
Definitely.
so it could open doors like that are super amazing, and it really just hopefully empowers people to listen to our message that cannabis can progress us forward and in the right way, not in like a crazy like backhand drugs on war kind of
Absolutely.
way. So that was a real high, and I'm really excited to talk about it, really excited to get into it and keep just getting better.
That's all the goal can be. And I look forward to next year's awards and again, getting higher and higher because that's what we like to do. A.
Okay, literally and figuratively. And
Of course.
so, so I actually did want to start off with really high, kind of hot topic because there's so many things going on in the world today, and I think we need to hear about some good stuff in the cannabis industry. And so, our first hot topic is about research on medical marijuana states and laws that are actually active, seeing some 20% drop in opioid prescriptions. Now, if you know anything about opioids, you know a lot of times the doctor prescribes it. It is a schedule, but it's not as heavily scheduled as cannabis.
Mhm.
And what happens is when you no longer get your opioids prescribed by the doctor, you go to the streets. And then people turn into heroin addicts, methamphetamine, and things that really get into the place of that opioid high. And so with medical marijuana states that have access to smokable flower, universal products, products that allow ingestibles, sublinguals, tropicals, they are seeing a decrease in opioid prescription use. And this comes out of a study of Columbia University, Irving Medical Center.
Okay. So first of all, I love that people are finally studying the cannabis industry. And I'm also like saying, duh, we've been saying this, right? Cannabis is medicine first. And our first experience in the Arizona market, we saw in a much higher patient population how helpful cannabis could be as it pertains to getting off of any drugs, whether your high blood pressure pill or your diabetes, your sugar pill, all of those things start to come off the list for folks over 55 and definitely over 60. I feel like, I'm glad to see this stated and studied by a prestigious university. I think more and more we're starting to see folks be interested in cannabis as medicine, and I'm like, hey, welcome to the party. Hey,
Yeah.
hey.
We
But
buzz in a pack.
What'd you say?
I said we buzz in a pack.
We buzz in a pack, but I want them to come with the right intention, and also ensure that we are pushing more on further research so we can get bigger and bigger, because there's still so much we don't know. But this lets us know what we already know, right? And what we've been working on for the last few years is how do we create business and regulatory frameworks, government frameworks that is centered around cannabis as medicine, because it's just going to do a lot better on the medical side and on the adult use side.
Absolutely. And just so it's clear, the research pointed out that restrictive medical cannabis laws with low THC, no access to products, only saw a small increase, I think, in the opioid prescriptions. So actually, when you don't have a program, it just further pushes people to opioids.
Wow. So it actually went up for the places that legalize. So, here's the thing also, the opposition running that janky story to prove that cannabis legalization didn't work. So it's being used against us regularly, the Kevin Sabett's of the world, when you have a scenario like that. So we need to brag about the opposite all the time. But when you see that they've set up the market poorly, and then they expect these tremendous outcomes when you started off from the beginning, not on the right page, not in the right mind frame or mindset. And so I hope we do more, because like I was saying earlier to someone, we have for a while focused on cannabis as tax revenue. Shoot, in some states, it's under the Department of Taxation and Revenue. And it's like, no. It's not about how much money it's going to make you first. It is, how is it going to resolve countless medicinal issues in our population due to imbalance generally, due to the level of stress we're under. Look what's happening now.
Right.
People's endocannabinoid systems are going out of whack for sure. And so I definitely am excited to see this. This gives me hope. It makes me very much look forward to the work that, I'm continuing to do, working with Dr. Rachel Knox. I love that I'm part of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation for this exact reason. And I definitely have to share that with our team to make sure that they're aware in their markets as they are advocating.
Absolutely. I really, really want people to understand that, yes, cannabis helps with the money, but if they're not going to give us universal health care, the least they could do is let us smoke a little bit ganja. Hello. So on to our hot topic number 2, which talks about a medical marijuana program coming online. Most people don't know. Yes, the West Coast is live and green, but the Heartland is trying to get some cannabis too. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Oklahoma has a great cannabis comprehensive program, or not a great, but one of the better, because we can only approve at this point. Yes. And then Arkansas also now has access to their medical marijuana, but most people don't know Missouri is starting a medical marijuana program as well. And so their regulators actually released draft rules that would talk about what requirements medical marijuana dispensaries should have. One of their requirements actually would be to talk about the dangers of vaping THC products and the vaping related illnesses due to vaping.
What? I mean, so they're going to make them, as part of the law, push a story that is not actually accurate. If anything, I would suggest that they create labels that focus on not consuming any, legacy market products in the vape form, right? Like that's the most I would do. But to say is vaping THC specifically, no. Doctors for Cannabis Regulation just put out a statement on vaping and smoking during COVID-19 pandemic. And we had a robust discussion, and it's very clear that we can't say for certain a lot of things. It doesn't help, harm, or, do better for or prevent rather these diseases, although we've recently gotten a little bit more news to say maybe it does. But this feels extra, and it feels like one of those things where we have all of these irrational fears that are based not in real science, based not in the real story. And, even though the market is doing well, it really is connected to the previous point where it's like, yo, your market is not going to have the best outcomes if you keep the shackles on it while it's working. In some ways, they're really like chokeholding the plant by some of the way that it's approached.
For sure. But when you have things like the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association sending letters to the health department back in 2019 asking for stricter testing and production standards to be put in place before your sales begin, what do you expect? That is who they're listening to.
They should listen to that, because I do agree we need testing, and the places that think, oh, we don't care, then you have a rash of bad outcomes. But what the problem is how it's interpreted. They've interpreted it in a way that's harmful for the industry. And so that's why it's also so important that when you do that, the people who are doing that are clearly aware of how to communicate the words we use. I mean, remember last year we were talking about building a cannabis campus, and media called it a pot farm. It doesn't quite ring the same way, if you know what I mean. So I think that we've got to be clear when we go to these legislators as to what we want. And so clear, it means essentially creating a team around you that really should be a team within government doing the work. Economist, someone who understands finance, someone who understands the consumer. All those thoughts need to go into what the plan should be to ensure that the rules and the regulation help still protect but doesn't deflect from the industry. That's just the fact. And I think this is just one example of doing part of the work and thinking that the legislators are going to do the rest. But what happens is our biases start to seep into every discussion, and it's the blind leading the blind. One person brings it up, that's like, oh yeah, and there's no context of research or science behind any of it. It's all, I just remember it being bad. Even doctors do it, and I have to check them. I don't care what you was doing in college. I care about you doing
20
this
years
from
ago.
your MD mind and thinking about it like a scientist and a physician. Not, oh, well, when I was in college, I did like that's actually not going to help us. I think we have to shed the bias, not just on color, but on the green, the plant. It's treated very similarly. It's demonized, and we work through the process of slowly unraveling that. And it's not an overnight thing, and it takes a constant pressure and people like myself, like yourself, willing to speak out about it and say, hey, this don't sound right, and it's not going to work. So we'll watch them, because I do think we have seen and we have said in previous episodes this was going to happen, and then look, this was going to happen, and then it did. We could go back to season 1 talking about MedMen.
Well, I mean, truth be told, I definitely agree. But here's my thing. When you ask for stricter production, stricter testing, I understand, but why do we have to say strict? Why does it have to be this? Why can't we just uphold the same standards mainstream has? Not for nothing. How hard are they testing the produce in our grocery stores?
That is a fact, because I just was talking to someone about the agriculture department in a state, and they do not track any of them in that particular state. But, of course, I know that there are states that do, California. So you're right. It's states' rights to decide, even though I kind of feel there should be a certain level that if we know certain things are happening and it's bad and it's going to keep our citizens and constituents safe, we need to do it, as opposed to what has happened in some states like, well, our people don't care about that. Well, they should, and aren't you the one that we elect to do what's in the best interest? So you should care and you should want to do it, but that's not what happens.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And that's not what happens. However, it does feel as though they are trying to create restrictions on keeping certain people out and certain tiers out. So, yeah, when you create harder testing, harder production requirements, who do you not want to have their own manufacturing factory? Who do you
I
not want to
completely
have
agree.
their testing lab? So the
You are
Department of
spot on.
Health and Senior Services will allow public comments on the drafted rules until June 8th. And what's great about everything now being digital is, guess what? You don't have to be from Missouri to say your opinion.
That's very good. I'm glad to hear that. And you're right. I think you made very strong points that I cannot deny. It does feel like a strategic move. And what it is, that's why it wasn't all the way thought through. That's why they were just like, throw it out there. And then they on the other end want to complain about it and then be our allies. At the end of the day, those things still need to happen. And the only barrier for most of us is actually the capital. And so what their responsibility, if they're really truly allies and they really truly want a diverse community and to really show it, is to make sure that that gap is closed on that cost of capital, because we don't have it. And we know that from the fact that the wealth in the United States is 90% within white families. Black families have about 2.5% of the wealth of the United States. We do not have it if we were going to make it ourselves. And the ones that do, unfortunately, we're so, dispersed and discombobulated, it really doesn't make for much of an effort. It isn't very good at like kind of really getting a snowball effect started. So you do need allies that are going to say, hey, I have, kind of like this guy on Fox that they were interviewing, and they were talking about the protesters, and they surely thought he was going to talk bad, and he kicked up ballistics. They was like, oh, you got the right rich white guy today. But that's who we need, and we need to make those connections. And we let's be honest, it's not everybody, right? Like, so we do have those connections. We just have to make them, happen again. Whether it's people I went to school with at Princeton, worked out with United Way, at Target, at Victoria's Secret, those are people who are in the right spaces and have the right connections. And for a while, this has been all hidden and, scary. And now we have an ability to make it unscary. It's our transition, it's our crossover and the way we continue to move that makes people like, hey, let me send my husband and talk about this with you. The most like straight, square person, it's because we are making changes and it's working. And that's the same way it feels when you're trying to build a fire out in the woods and it's like taking you forever to get that spark. But once it starts, your job is just to fan the waves, and let it go. And that's what we got to do.
I definitely agree. I do. I just think that we have to be very aware that there will be some allies or some sheeps that are wolves wearing our skin. So not everyone, just because they're ally in that moment does not mean they really an ally. So you got to be careful with that. You can't just be like, come be our ally, and then next thing you know, they throwing you underwater, drowning you. I'm good on that. And
We have
so
some factors, and we've been really misled in so many different ways. So I don't disagree, and I think you have to keep being skeptical. Black Lives Matter, they have to keep being skeptical. A lot of people have been talking junk about them, not rah-rah and the mayor for that whole thing she laid out. And I'm not going to say that didn't look cool and I wasn't like goosebumps and that's what I'm talking about because she's a sister, this is what we do. But it is aesthetics, and it is almost like a celebrity-like move. And I work with governments, so I know that there's a lot of work that has to be done just to do that. And I'm kind of like, we got to actually use that work over here now. Like, we got so much going on. We got to be as focused as possible, as strategic as possible, energy-wise. And sometimes I think that they can buy us, your generation as well, by just doing stunts. And social media makes it so that it really does feel like always a stunt. And at this point, I'm definitely, trying my best to be a good bridge in the conversation, because they're right. They should be like, nah, that's not enough, because it isn't. We just talked about that. But they also have to figure out, and I was jokingly saying they need a communications lead, because they have to figure out how they're talking to people as a whole.
yeah.
And the 40-year-old like myself may like totally rock with them, but not like the disrespectful way in which they're communicating their discourse. At the end of the day, you can still say, yo, that's fucked up. But we appreciate, like, oh, that was good, or that's what's up. But
that was a PR stunt. We are over your PR stunts. We giving a clap, we giving a golf clap to PR stunts still in 2020 is over it. Maybe if it was 2015 or when Tamar Rice got killed, or just all these people, there's too many people that I could interchange different names and people. And it's not just Black Lives Matter with police, it's random white people feeling like they have the ability to police us. They ain't got no badge, they never went to one self-defense training, claiming or nothing, and they got the right to tell me, hey, sit there. No, you can't sit nothing, I'm grown. So no, I over these PR stunts. I understand you work with government, so you have to keep it a little bit more posh and polished, but absolutely not. We don't care about it. And everyone's like, peace, positivity. I'm not like for that. I am here for productivity. Yes, but I want good change, because we could get some more change and they fuck us in the ass again, excuse my language, no lotion, basically. That's what they did with the war on drugs. They dismantled us, and then they just kept rearing it up. And it's like, yo, what is going on? And they created law after law after law that just hurt us, held us down, and really created modern slavery. So no, I don't need change. I need progression. I need productivity. I need benefits. I need true access. I need more than just a PR. Like, boo, I could have wrote that with some chalk in the street too if it really was like a thing, okay? And so I'm glad you brought this up, because it's getting into our hot topics, and it's raising tensions, getting us heavy into our conversation. As hot topic number 3 is really about the cannabis stores being closed due to protests. Now, as we know, a lot of protests are erupting all across the country. Mm-hmm. And there are quite a few cannabis shops being affected at the moment. So we're going to go to different parts of our country where we talk about their cannabis stores and what's happened. So we'll start off. California, for instance, was one of the stores and states that had their cannabis shops broken into. California retailers like Bloom, Cookies, Harborside, even Men, we not that mad about, was broken into in San Francisco Bay Area. Now, what we know about the Bay Area, there ain't even that many Black people no more. So I wonder who's doing the breaking in. They're in. But that is a different discussion for a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And however, there are some people that come to the real highlight and point of having the protesters back, because Berner recently went on his live and he said, it's extremely unfortunate what happened to our store tonight on Melrose. But as a human living in the world we're living in today, I cannot expect anything less than justice is served. We can rebuild our stores, but you cannot bring someone's life back. Now, that truly felt genuine from him, because there's a lot of people saying a lot of things right now. It felt genuine because he's a Black and brown person. It doesn't just affect Black people. It is our Hispanic brothers. It is our Indian brothers. It is even our Asian brothers, sisters too. Of course, I use that pronoun for all of us, really, but it is really everybody at this point that is not white that gets
Well,
targeted.
yes, we call it Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC. I think at the end of the day, you
That is a
hit.
long thing.
I know, but that's why people who are white, they're confused. I think a little bit, because they're not the majority. When you take Black, Indigenous, and people of color, we are the majority of this earth. And the reality is that that is scary for some folks, but I think you call out the right vibe from people who are truly in it. And Berner's in it. He's he's Hispanic. He has his issues within the industry as well, and prior to, and he also, I think, said it in the right way, because he's got a very broad audience, is that he's a humanist, and that means that he cares about, clearly, that all lives are mattering. I think what is interesting is I'm appreciative of the memes that are helping to try to re-educate some folks who are just waking up today, and they're fortunate and have that privilege to be in this sort of la la land, because it doesn't apply to them every single day since they were a little person. But I have to also say, while that's happening, do you have like disrespect like the Philadelphia Inquirer? Philadelphia is a city that is highly populated by Black people. The things that are happening are really devastating, and it feels like setups. And I spent some time in Philadelphia at the United Way and downtown, and I know a lot of people on the ground. I mean, when we talk about these cities, Minneapolis, I've lived so many places. I was hitting up so many people that are still there on the ground. And there is a difference between the protests that are happening during the day. A lot of unprovoked police activity is happening, to very, very mild protesting, if you will, a lot of raising of lighters, but lots of people. And what it seems like is also happening is that they have instilled some of these curfews, and the police are strategically barricading people in. So as they were trying to depart, they're not really able to, because once they bring all of the cars and all of that, it makes it hard for you to disperse. And then just as the curfew ends, and it's like, oh, now they have an ability to come after you. I've seen some disturbing things on the internet, and actually I've decided to roll back and stay off of it, and you'll see that I've been blacking out on the internet. I'm saying internets. I'm saying what I need to say, because it needs to be said. It needs to be said on both sides. It's not just one side. Particularly, I think I really have had such a diverse experience growing up as a woman of business, international business, right, to be able to offer a lot of different perspectives. And I've always just been me. Even this thing I said recently was about not seeing color. We do have to retrain some of our allies. For years, I used to ignore that shit. I used to ignore it because I'm like, they're trying. But the reality is that it's important for them to really know we need our wokest of woke allies, right? We don't got bullshit time. We really don't. And so it's important for you to really know that if you really are my ally, telling people and you that you're being your line, you don't see color is not accurate at all. How is it possible that you're going to take a palette that has literally been mostly lily white and draw and create a rainbow of colors and talk about you don't see color? Like, you have to be deliberate with it. The same way it was deliberately lopsided, deliberately a white palette, then we are creating some something that's deliberately a diverse group of colors. And then it's like, if you don't see color, then you definitely don't see me as a person, because I am a Black woman. And if you don't see, we see everything. If you don't see gender, if you don't see all of the things, disabilities that make up the individual, then you are copping out as far as I'm concerned. Because the real work is seeing people for exactly who they are, right? And deciding and saying, hey, but they still deserve a seat at the table.
Well,
that's what real diversity is.
You are going off, but we got to keep this hot topic rolling.
Sorry.
And so there are some cannabis closures even in Oregon and actually in Illinois. Every dispensary in Chicago is indefinitely closed until further quote unquote looting is done and businesses are allowed to clean up. Now, it's even sadder as I talk more about this hot topic, because one of the only few of Black-owned cannabis stores in Boston, Pure Oasis, was robbed on Monday morning, even though pretty much the whole entire day there had been peaceful protests against police brutality, even though I feel like we're only saying police brutality, but it's a long laundry list of things. Like, can we stop talking about police brutality? We just had enough at police brutality, right? Because when you protect and serve and pay somebody paycheck, after you look at your paycheck and you be like, dang, that's how much I'm paying in taxes just to get pulled over and a knee in the neck. Yeah, we've just fed up at this point. However, this is sad because it is a Black-owned store. They stole over $100,000 worth of merchandise, a lot of cannabis products, and not for nothing, a lot of owners are feeling like these things are kind of staged. They're not actually a part of the protest. They may not even be people of color, truth of the matter. So once you say those things and you think about it, you realize that our first of all, it's hard as heck to be a Black-owned store within the cannabis space, period. It's very hard to get access, licensing, even people to work for you and under you in that way. And to have this happen, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on She Blaze, they're really just opening up. They really didn't even get to open up how like strong they could have because of COVID. So to then turn around and to have people break in and still, it sounds like a lot, if not most of the merchandise that was in the store at the time, it's pretty saddening. And I wonder, what does the store look like? Like, do they have like brown people opening a pre-roll? Do they have marketing that is more Afrocentric? Like, what does the store look like that was like, we're gonna hit that store? And did they understand that it was Black owned?
Well, it had a whole bunch of press, and they don't have to have any extra signing because they're like basically the only. So it makes it so when you stick out like a sore thumb as the only, because remember, we talked about the fact that there's just very, very minimal Black-owned anything in cannabis in Massachusetts as far as the dispensaries. And they got a nice spread. A lot of media, when they did open, it was a very good open for them. In fact, when we were going to be speaking at NECAN, I was really excited to visit. So I'm definitely disappointed for them. I'm praying for them. And I think that I'm hoping that enough people will come and support because of all of this goodwill that's going around all of a sudden as it pertains to Black lives actually mattering. I also think it's important what you exactly said is that there's a lot of older folks, in my opinion, believe that because this is the spark that lit it, right, that there somehow is a mistake or a misunderstanding that there's other shit that's really devastating and killing us. This week I watched a videotape of a transgender woman being beat by maybe about 20 or 30 young Black men, and I was like horrified. It's Pride Month, and I'm just like horrified that these are the things that we're still doing. So when we're saying Black Lives Matter, we're not even, you can't do the same thing that white folks doing to us, talking about all lives matter. Like, we're not talking about one particular thing. We're not just talking about Floyd's death, because even though his life didn't matter, and his life being snuffed away traumatized us enough to recognize this all needs to stop right now, because this is what is actually really happening to us on a daily basis. And let's be honest, we just started having phones. Like, we just started having phones. It's been going on for fucking decades. And, you know, it is one thing of a larger thing that has really plagued America. And what that man said on Fox was that America's never like really, again, paid the debt for what they owe to people of color in terms of being able to build the wealth that they have. And that is what is really the issue, is accepting that. And so many people feeling like they don't need to or shouldn't. And I'm this and I'm that. And I'm like, but the facts show, and just look. And it's a struggle. But I'm sad to hear about Kobe and team, and I know that we as a cannabis community will rally around them. But you know, I think that brings a good way to segue to hot topic number 4, which is about all of the reason that these protests are still going, and you know, the fact that people within the cannabis industry are, yes, a few of them are speaking out against, but most are either in it or they are allies. And because they know that cannabis prohibition is actually a good percentage, I would say is a good core, as part of that core team of things that the United States has used to really create these disparities for Black people. It's the racial injustice for even that prohibition that has gone on for years, decades, and we still are dealing with it. They basically stole a whole generation in the 80s and 90s due to the war on drugs. And yet opening up these new markets deliberately try to keep these people out, our people out, and we are part of that. We grew up in that environment. And that to me is the most ridiculous thing. And now, of course, you have a bunch of them trying to figure out how they're going to be a part of it. But I think you brought up Cory Booker here, and I want you to share with us a little bit more, because I'm glad he's highlighting it. Of course, he is the person who is, you know, one of the first that brought it to the national level. So it's not a surprise, but what is he talking about? What is he actually saying here?
Well, first of all, I just have to give a disclaimer, because I do need people to understand the age difference. I grew up post-war on drugs in the early 2000s. So I actually wasn't really like all the way even cognitive in the 90s. So to be clear,
Okay. I'm young.
I mean, I'm not that young, but I mean, my cognitive age really starts from the 2000s and up. Anything
Absolutely.
before that, I'm not really sure. So just to understand, so you and our other sisters grew up in the 80s and 90s with that war on drug fire thing. They wasn't playing that in the 20,000s. I'm just saying.
Not quite the same. They was onto a different thing. And one of those is definitely gang related stuff, which has always been ongoing and pervasive. And
Absolutely.
They want it to be. I saw a great picture of, you know, 2 rival gangs holding hands and locking their bandanas. It could have been posed. It could have, you know, PR stunts are happening. We're trying to inspire. But if even one person who is in charge of these groups sees that and is like, yo, bro, they're killing us. Like, we got to, because in the end of the day, we're going to have to figure out what the next steps are. And that's the part I'm definitely actively working on in the different ways that I do it, but we collectively have to do that.
So Cory Booker, who we know is really the leading force on getting cannabis legalization passed kind of federally, he decided to really highlight some of the social issues, including disparities in marijuana enforcement, and really saying that it is, like we said, more evolved than just police brutality. It's also with marijuana. And really, he's let us know that this is a laundry list of the criminal justice system targeting people, and it starts with cannabis criminalization. To even get stopped and frisked is because of a sniff. So it's really upsetting. that most people don't understand this, but he definitely made it clear for them on MSNBC that this is the reason and even the spark to the police wanting to talk to you, wanting to start your criminal rap sheet. And he sponsors a lot of federal legalization marijuana. And I really think it hasn't gotten passed because they just don't get it. They don't understand the benefits of cannabis. And so I think that he really is trying to empower his colleagues to understand his point of view, where he's coming from. But they just might not get it if they keep calling us thugs every time we turn on the TV. And the fact that maybe the Justice Department is looking into these thugs now because we're protesting against the racial disparities. Which leads us into our main topic, a really important thing we want to discuss because there's a lot of history behind the Justice Department, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the things that Cory Booker talked about on MSNBC.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cory hits the nail on the head in terms of why and how deep this goes, and that people do need to peel back the layers. They also have to start, and I found out by looking again at social media, apparently Amazon has sold out of a lot of the books and history books on racism. So interesting. That means a lot of my older classmates at Princeton may be getting more widely read.
Or they could just not give us access because we're trying to figure out what to do next.
That's true too. I mean, you are forever the conspiracy theorist, so I could count on you for that. I was
trust them.
The glass half full by saying, these have been specialty areas for a long time. Princeton did not even want to have an African American department. I had to do a sit-in in order for us to have an extra Swahili class, and they were like, "Go to Rutgers." I'm like, "But wait, this is the #1 school in the country." But then again, this is also one of those schools that really, in my opinion, represent the elite and best of America. And in 250 years, there's only been one African-American valedictorian, and that just happened this year. So that tells you how pervasive, how deep all of these real issues are, because that's a long time. And we have a lot of brilliant folks that are melanated. So it really does, kind of shocks me when I look at the numbers. And I think it's important for people to really press on the history, because they're going to learn a lot more about what could be happening and make a better strategic plan. Don't make the same mistakes. So right now, very quickly after the protests have happened, we just saw a report that the Drug Enforcement Agency is now going to be granted temporary power to conduct covert surveillance on demonstrators at the George Floyd protest. And some folks will be like, well, how do they know I'm there? Well, okay, if you have a mask, maybe not so much, but those folks running around without a mask, those folks constantly posting on social media under a hashtag that everybody can access, that's how they're going to know.
Tattoos are identifiers.
You're absolutely
Facebook
right.
works with the DEA.
And if you don't wear a mask, there are cameras everywhere, so you will be able to have facial recognition. And here's the thing. If you go back to our histories, right, there's several instances where the federal government has utilized drugs. And that's why we'll go back to that in a second. This is the Drug Enforcement Agency, right? Not the FBI, right? It's the Drug Enforcement Agency. That's what gave me the flag. Because what does drugs have to do with protesting? If you've done something where you've looted or you have tried to vandalize or you've done of that nature in the protests, that is definitely a law enforcement group. It's probably the local police. It might be the state police. It might be the FBI. But when you bring in the Drug Enforcement Agency, you're bringing in an organization that is focused specifically on drugs. So what are they assuming folks are doing that's still not legalized? They're assuming you're smoking weed, or now they feel like people are raging. That's a new storyline, depending on which channel you're watching, and you're utilizing like those stimulants like meth and all of that. And so one, I would say if you're doing the protest, you want to make sure you don't arrive with anything. But two, if you are using cannabis and you are in one of the 30 plus states that has a medical program, go get your medical card, because that is the only thing that the DEA really cannot for real touch. They are, in my opinion, repeating history, looking for an opportunity to essentially take away your civil liberties, your right to privacy by simply because you showed up at a protest. And it doesn't say who led it or did it, it's just showed up. And so as we have so many people who are on the ground, some folks may believe, oh, they're doing it so they could figure out who the looters are. I guess they
Not
know.
the Drug Enforcement Agency. No, no, no. And you want to talk about conspiracies? There are a lot of proof in these conspiracies from the history. So yes, the DEA is watching, and that's why I haven't actually been as down in the protests as I've been in the past. Like, I've done bunch of Black Lives Matter protests before this year. I've done a lot of rallies against Trump even. So I have been a part of this activist world for years and years. First of all, I'm over 25. I'm tired of walking. My feet be hurting. I stand up a lot. I wear heels. But because that, and I am in the legal cannabis industry, so you automatically have a target on your back. So what is a way that you can protest without actually being in these streets and protesting? Lobby day.
Yep.
Going and
protest.
the new protest is lobby day. And when I say that, people look at me and they're like, well, lobby day, what we gonna lobby? We can't even go nowhere. I'm like, you make your own lobby day. Them white people went up there with their guns and they signs to the state capitol. They didn't do it in the downtown. They took their fight to the capitol. They didn't take their fight to the streets. And so when we're being strategic like that, we have to understand that we can protest, we could loot. I don't really care about none of them stores. Really, Gucci who? If I'm paying some hundreds of dollars for a purse, it's gonna be made by somebody that look like me personally. But that is just my personal philosophy. Mm-hmm. And I really do think that if we are going to cause a ruckus, let's cause a ruckus where they make their laws. People are like, go out and vote, even though certain states do steal our votes. We are not close to that. Go out, vote anyway. But when you go out, vote, and lobby, it's like, whoa, you hitting them with a double whammy, like a two-piece, like boom, boom. That's how you do it. You don't just like go and protest and then there's nothing, because we've been doing that.
Yes.
We did.
And that is, a major concern of us older folks. So, because I know you wanted to make sure everybody knew you was younger. I have no problem looking like this, saying that I am 15 years older than you, boo. Okay. Hey, shout out to the 40 and fabulous. I just had to put that out there because I've been waiting.
Well, we on camera, so I can't even say the shade I want to say, because we could be just fun shading each other back the whole time. So I'm not going to say nothing.
Okay. The grades are popping. But no, you're right about everything that you did say. With, my perspective, again, as just a citizen, I feel like I have a right to privacy, and my supporting an issue as just an ongoer to a protest should not forfeit that. But that is the issue with the way the government tends to operate, and it's certainly not on our behalf. We've never been able to put into law anything that isn't racially biased. So who do you think is actually going to bear the brunt of it? Even while legalization was happening and undergoing, as California had done its medical marijuana legalization, the operators in California that were catching federal cases, meaning there was no Cole memo yet, they were catching federal cases, were Black ones. And that is just, again, what I concern myself with. But I think we can be smart. I think Lobby Day is one of them. I think we also have to recognize that we need to be more civic minded. Your civic life depends on it, real talk. Who you vote for does not lie on no party lines. I've been sharing a little quote from Ice-T, and I was like, dang, the world must be really going crazy, because I agree with him. And real talk, I ain't got nothing wrong with him or not. I ain't never followed, but the truth is he's saying some bars, and they're not over a dope beat. They just on Twitter, and it really is like the truth. I am not here for the right-left conversation. Dismiss me with that, because they are just two wings on the same bird. We are not seeing whether it's the man who has his foot on our neck or the police officer that's just sitting and watching. That's a Republican and a Democrat. It is not a choice between those two. Fuck them, right? That's really real talk. I'm not that. I've never been that for at least the last 10 years of my life. Once I got into real corporate America, I started to see that it was a money conversation, which is why it's a little concerning that when you have Trump, who has been a money man, in charge of your country, it's only going to be other money men, really, that is having that
He's a
conversation.
fake money man. How many bankruptcies has his business had?
This is true, but that is a tactic, just so you know, that is commonly employed. So when we talk about it with him, while I do agree, and we should call it out, is what is the stereotype is that we don't know how to run businesses when these white boys fucking up businesses on a regular basis, but they're using their tactics to back themselves out of the corner. We don't have that capability because we haven't had access. 90% of America's wealth is in the white family's hands, and 2.5% is in ours. So while we can go back and say, hey, we need more banks, we need this, they existed, they destroyed them. And every time we start to amass something, it gets destroyed. So you got to be strategic about what is actually happened in the past and start to think about that as you are putting together plans. We are always doing this. We've been doing this as far as cannabis is concerned. And I'm saying welcome to everybody that's now really trying to be in the movement, because a lot of this does stem around how we've been incarcerated and kept down. You know, slavery is illegal, but putting someone in prison is not. And that is what they have been leveraging for a good 60 years to enslave us still. And then want to blame us for the gangs and the black on black crime, which, by the way, is the only thing being tracked, because if you go and ask for the white on white crime, you actually are not able to pull any of the numbers. So what is that about? I'm not here for it. I'm not buying either story. I don't need a program to get me right. That would be the Democrats. I wouldn't call it a plantation, but I'm not here for people that's putting in front of something that's supposed to be good, but behind it is shit.
I'm not here for the Amy Coopers of the world, because that's
Absolutely
what they are.
not.
You know, I voted for Hillary. You want a motherfucking cookie? Like, didn't she sign a law that basically was like three strikes? Her husband signed a law that was like 3 strikes you out on crack. On crack, not on killing, not on basically taking away people's livelihoods, money, undermining contracts, redlining. That didn't get 3 strikes. No. But 3 strikes, you're out on some crack. And y'all snorting cocaine? Get out of here. Not even here for
the same thing. Again, I love that I come from a branding world, because I'm like, I can't be an architect of the infrastructure and then be the person that succumbs to the infrastructure. We see you, we see everything, and we have ability to lead the way in the conversation. And that's why I'm so excited to always be on She Blaze with you every week, because it gets deep, girl. It gets real deep.
It does get deep. We got to figure out how to do our little 2-minute clips of all this together, so we could just post a quick minute video on Instagram, because some of the stuff we be saying with protest, lobby day is a new protest. You said something about the DEA. I mean, these quotes are crazy, you guys. And ultimately, you know, we're asking for our reparations, our 40 acres and a mule. America don't got no money. It's all in the white man's pocket. The only way we're going to see some money is if we get this cannabis legalization passed the right way. You heard?
And pay attention, because sometimes we get diverted by symbolism and PR stunts when, you know, although one could be happy for their $1,200 plus $500 per kid, the reality is that the big businesses during COVID-19, a pandemic, a crisis, done take home $500 billion. Check that in the fucking ledger. Okay, so I will stop there, because I can't drop too much information, but at the end of the day, we need to be looking in the right spaces and stop celebrating all of the scraps that's coming off the table. $500 billion, girl. I'll have to
check your references. Ooh, ouch. Well, thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for kicking the ballistics and always keeping it 1,000 for real, because we got to keep it real during these moments and times in the crazy world.
Yes, absolutely. We all we got. That's real. And I feel like that's, you know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Hello. Well, watch She Blaze on Facebook Live on Saturday mornings and listen to us anytime on Soundcloud, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And make sure you subscribe to the WeedHead to stay up to date on what's blazing in the cannabis industry.
Well, as always, I want to say thank you so much, Ice, for always finding the tea. And congratulations again for our award-winning podcast, She Blaze. Whoop, whoop.
All
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody. I hope you enjoy your week.